President Christian Kabore declared 2 days of national mourning. Jihadist groups have stepped up attacks in Burkina Faso and other West African countries in recent years. Joining me in the studio is a security analyst and studies terrorism and joins me in the studio now. Adib, thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
That's all. On Al Jazeera's website today, it was reported that civilians have died as of today. It means the situation is not getting any better in Burkina Faso.
Absolutely not. Since 2015, over 700 people, according to sources, have died. Attacks have become more like a daily ritual. And it goes without saying that the 700 we know might even be more, because many of the dead are unaccounted for. Many of the happenings are in remote parts of Burkina Faso. And so you would realize that we're not making any headway, despite the existence of certain operations, military operations against the jihadists in this area. Early in November, the French Minister of Armed Forces, Madame Florence Parly, arrived in Ouagadougou and promised to send troops to add up to the already existing troops in that region to help the Burkinabe authorities fight these militants in an area they call the 3 border points. And these 3 border points are those areas where Burkina Faso borders Mali and Niger, and they are most notorious for these terrorist elements. And it also goes without saying that already there's Operation Barkhane that involves the militaries of the Sahel G5 and other countries. Currently, we have about 5,000 French soldiers in that region. So what it means is our overconcentration on the militarized nature of fighting terrorism in that area is not working. And it would interest you, it would interest you to know that there are areas in Burkina Faso which is predominantly non-Muslim Christians, but it's a hotbed of these, terror groups. So the question is, what is going on?
Good question. What is going on? Could it be the French intervention?
Well, the French intervention, interestingly, is part. Yes, because a lot of Burkinabes especially have some misgivings about French military involved in their so-called domestic issues, and it brings back memories of colonization, and some of them thinking, look, we can solve these issues ourselves. But most importantly, these militant groups take advantage of local grievances. So where there's no governmental control, poor sanitation, healthcare is inadequate, unemployment, poverty, these militants step in and fill the vacuum, and they are able to maintain some level of control. They are able to impose sanctions, and they are able to provide certain basic social services. So it appeals to the people, and they get to, rather than repel these groups, harbor them because of these local grievances.
You mentioned G5 in your earlier submission, and do you think they have, security-wise, do you think they have the capability to curtail what's happening now?
Well, it is very difficult to say, because this is what we call in security studies an asymmetrical warfare. It's not two countries, with their big forces head-on collision. No, it goes beyond that. This is a state actor against a non-state actor. So what they do is they hit and they run. They hit and they run. So, it's very difficult fighting them. A classical example is what is happening in northeastern Nigeria. You can imagine how magnanimous the Nigerian army is, yet they are unable to defeat Boko Haram. So what the militaries succeed in doing is dislodging them from their bases, but they are not able to completely decimate them due to their inability to work hand in hand with the communities in which these militant groups operate.
Now, as a security analyst, Adib, is there a connection between what's happening in Libya and Burkina Faso? Can you draw a line between the two?
Absolutely, positively. Let's not forget about the fact that in 2016, the African AU Commission on Peace and Security released its figures that indicated there were well over 6,000 Africans from Sub-Saharan Africa joining forces in Libya, Syria, and Iraq, fighting alongside the Islamic State. Well, Islamic State, they say, is no longer existent because they've been able to dislodge them from their bases. But does that mean we have completely dealt a final blow to them? No. These militants are finding their way back to their home bases, like we have with Shamima Baghoum, the ISIS bride who intended going back to UK, but the UK government said, no, we are not allowing you, go back to Bangladesh where you originally came from. So these militants who are under the radar of the European security services are unfortunately finding their way back to Sub-Saharan Africa.
That's disturbing.
So it is extremely disturbing because when we have a lot of Ghanaians, especially, okay, fine, Sub-Saharan Africans going all the way to Libya in their quest to reach Europe.
Right.
And when they get to Libya, do we know who the friends they make? You know, they come into contact with these militant groups. And the next minute, we are making noise and government would have to repatriate these guys back home. When they bring them back home, do we debrief?
Right.
Do we subject them to
do we know what
any
activities
sort of
they engage
surveillance?
in? Right.
That is worrying.
Now, let's bring it home. Naturally, because we share a border with Burkina Faso, should we have cause to worry?
We have every reason to worry. Terrorism is going beyond a Western thing. It is a global issue now. Let's not forget about the fact that groups such as Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Ansar Din, Ansar Sharia, Mujahid, through their leaders such as Mukhtar Mukhtar, have sworn heaven and earth to attack all Western targets, and they are collaborators within Sub-Saharan Africa. And we are not excluded. They've done that in Mali, Burkina Faso, Grand Bassam, Ivory Coast, and we are not vindicated. We, not long ago, signed an agreement with the US, the Defense Cooperation Agreement. So what does it make us? Collaborators. So we are not immune. Unfortunately, when you talk, you have the National Security Minister and some other politicians saying, oh, everything is under control. Just recently, the UK government issued an advisory. You know, so we cannot afford to be complacent. We are treading dangerously, and I think it is high time our security agencies upped their game, especially ensuring better security at the border crossings.
Absolutely, I totally agree. What role does ECOWAS and the international community have to play, you know, as far as, you know, the situation in Burkina Faso is concerned? Well,
when I did my recent second master's in defense and international politics, I wrote extensively about ECOWAS and the role they can play. Well, so far we've had a number of protocols on counterterrorism, anti-money laundering, a whole lot of them. But the biggest issue has always been the ability of the various individual countries, after appending their signatures to these protocols, go back to their home countries and implementing what has been agreed, either in Abuja or in Niamey or in any part of the West African sub-region. Usually when they come home, they go back to sleep. We don't implement these protocols, and that is worrying because ECOWAS cannot work without the various West African countries
playing their
individual roles. So I think what we have to do now as a matter of urgency is to have all ECOWAS countries cooperating and sharing intelligence. That is very key because times have changed. The face of terrorism is changing by the minute. It's becoming more lethal, it's becoming more organized, it's becoming a transnational issue. So the possibility of any terrorist activity spilling over to another country is very real. So it's very important that we cooperate, especially when it comes to intelligence gathering. So we are able to always detect what they are up to, prevent it from even happening in the first place.
Adib Saani is a security analyst and has studied terrorism. Thank you very much for your time. We've been speaking about the situation in Burkina Faso and how it impacts Ghana. Up next is an MTN video report. Stay with us.